If you're sitting on large stock positions after years of strong market growth, you've probably wondered, how can I diversify without triggering a massive tax bill? Well, today we're going to unpack two advanced strategies that help you do just that. Now, they sound similar, and honestly, they even confuse a lot of professionals, but they're designed for very different situations. We're talking about the 351 exchange and the exchange fund. So let's break down how each works, when it might make sense to use one over the other. So here's the situation. After a long bull market, a lot of investors, maybe you included, have portfolios that are heavily weighted in a few specific stocks. And that's great when the market's going up, but it does create a challenge when you want to rebalance or diversify. Because if you sell those stocks, you trigger capital gains taxes. And depending on your portfolio, that could easily reach six figures. So advisors and investors have been looking for tax-efficient ways to diversify without creating a tax event. And that's where strategies like the 351 exchange and the exchange fund come in. They both use tax code to help you defer gains, but the who and the why behind each one are very different. Let's start with the 351 exchange. Think of this as a way to take an already diversified portfolio, maybe a mix of individual stocks and ETFs, and move those holdings into a new actively managed exchange traded fund without immediately triggering capital gains. In plain English, you're basically swapping your current portfolio for shares of a custom ETF that holds those same securities. Now, there are a few important rules. The collection of stocks you contribute can't have any single stock worth more than 25% of the total value, and your top 5 or fewer holdings together can't make up more than 50% of the portfolio's value. So that means in practice, the fewest number of individual securities you could contribute would be about 10. It's a built-in diversification test to make sure the contributed portfolio meets IRS requirements. Now, one question that often comes up is, what if you contribute a single ETF? Doesn't that break the rule? Well, actually it doesn't, because ETFs are considered look-through securities, meaning that the IRS sees all of the underlying holdings inside that ETF. So even though you're contributing just one ticker, it represents hundreds of underlying positions. Now, most liquid long securities, things like individual equities or bonds, can qualify, but emerging market securities and derivatives usually don't. These 351 exchanges are a relatively new option for financial advisors. So we see them being used by clients who've built large, complex portfolios where rebalancing could create a major tax hit. They're also becoming popular among advisors who started off using direct indexing for tax loss harvesting. And now they need another tax-efficient tool to take the next step. It's definitely not a do-it-yourself strategy, but when it's done correctly, it can be a game changer for people with sizable diversified portfolios. Now let's shift gears to the exchange fund. This one's designed for a very different type of client. If you've got a highly concentrated position, maybe you've built wealth through a company stock, or you've just held one stock for decades, selling that position can be tough because the taxes you're going to owe are going to be pretty substantial. An exchange fund lets you contribute your concentrated stock into a professionally managed pool of stocks that's built to mimic a diversified index like maybe the S&P 500. You're essentially trading part of your single stock exposure for a piece of a diversified basket. But here's the catch. These funds are typically only available to accredited investors, and they're not liquid. So you're usually going to need to hold your position for 7 years before you can redeem your shares. So while you get diversification and tax deferral, you could also give up some flexibility and the access to the capital for a while. But for someone who's been sitting on a single big position, that trade-off could be well worth it. So let's quickly compare them. A 351 exchange is best for someone who's already diversified but wants to restructure or simplify their holdings without triggering taxes. An exchange fund is for someone who's not diversified, someone who's concentrated in maybe 1 or 2 large stock positions. Now, a 351 exchange usually results in a liquid ETF that you can trade. An exchange fund, on the other hand, is illiquid. Your money's locked up for several years. Both help defer capital gains, but they serve totally different goals. So when you hear both terms, remember the same word exchange, but 2 different strategies. So how do you decide? Well, here's my advice. Before exploring either of these, get a clear understanding of your goals, current portfolio, and your tax situation. These aren't plug-and-play strategies. They require coordination between your financial advisor, your CPA, often a legal team, and definitely a fund sponsor. The right fit depends on whether you're trying to diversify a concentrated position or just reorganize an already diversified one. And remember, the goal isn't just to avoid taxes, it's to create a portfolio that's more efficient, more flexible, and better aligned with your long-term plan. So there you have it, the 351 Exchange and the Exchange Fund. Two powerful, very different tools for managing large stock positions. If you'd like to learn more about how either strategy might fit into your plan, connect with us at Perspective 6 Wealth Advisors. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out our other videos on tax strategy and portfolio design. I'm Matt Nelson. Thanks for watching.
Investment advisory services offered through Savvy Advisors, Inc. Other entities and/or marketing names, products, or services mentioned here are independent of Savvy Advisors, Inc.